Hello everyone, welcome to the spoiler talk for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6, and let's just get the cat out of the bag. This takes place 1 year after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5, and also I was a little bit wrong. Basically, the last 3 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5 take place in the beginning part of Infinity War, not the ending. Just wanted to be clear about that one. Anyway, yeah, the snap is not mentioned. Now, the reason for that is because of the fact that, well, Marvel was really secretive about this specific aspect. They were in contact with Marvel TV about what was going to happen so that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. can be prepared, except for this. The only thing TV people knew was like Thanos is coming. That's it. That is all we knew. So when we go 1 year in the future, and if you watch Endgame, it's 5 years of basically half of the universe being gone. Yeah, it is a missing thing. However, we're just gonna have to pretend that every place that we go to throughout this season is a place that was not heavily affected because of the fact that there's just like it's half of the universe, but like what does that mean? That question is never clear. Because, like, in a way, on Earth, you have the human race. Does that count? Or does it count the individual subcategories? Like, half of all white people, half of all black people, half of all Asians, half of all Mexicans. Like, all of that. Like, is that how it works? Like, I don't know how this works, you know? So, we're just gonna have to pretend that the snap happened, but these areas are heavily unaffected, and everyone from S.H.I.E.L.D. did not get snapped away. That's the best that I can do for you guys, okay? And also, to be honest, I rather the snap not be mentioned than be turned into a joke, because that's what happened in the Multiverse Saga. They basically turned the snap into a joke. Basically a joke, and I hated every second of that one. Thor Love and Thunder, I will grind you into the dirt when I get to you. God, that thing is just trash. Anyway, what has been happening in this last year for S.H.I.E.L.D.? Well, obviously, Mac is now the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's actually doing a pretty good job. Fitz, apparently, before the 1 year time skip happened, actually his ship got cut in half. He was unfrozen by Enoch because of that fact, and now he's missing. And also Daisy, Simmons, Davis, and also Piper, and potentially some other people who left the group later on, they decided to go into space, deep space that is, in order to find Fitz. So a lot has been going on, but it has been a year since, you know, the last season. So the search for Fitz isn't really going well, and we're forced to land on a planet called Derail, or whatever you want to call it. And there we meet a man named Truck, who initially has all of the power until Daisy does a wee bit of quaking, and well, you know, she then immediately gains the upper hand. And we are here for fuel, but we're also here for some information. Turns out the ship that Fitz was in was actually on this planet, at least the half that they are missing, and apparently it got sold. So we head over there, we find the place where Fitz is supposed to be inside of, and he's not in there. So we take that thing back to the ship. We're back to square zero, and Simmons goes inside of the thing in order to see if maybe she could just, you know, what would Fitz be looking at if he were lying in here? Meanwhile, on Earth, there are some weird readings that have been happening, and apparently around the basketball court, which guy is dribbling the ball, and the ball just breaks, like it shatters, and a portal opens up in a wall, and one guy comes out. However, the other guy is sadly enough not able to come out, and he fuses with the wall, so that's a little bit of a shame. But S.H.I.E.L.D. then shows up, the May portion, because we got different teams going to different locations, and they get shot out of the sky, so the dude escapes sadly enough, but we do still have Wall Guy, so we bring him back to base. So now we need to figure out what is happening, and there is a little bit of a theory going around that I actually don't remember, but there was a theory going around, so maybe something like that. However, none of that really matters because I know kind of what happens anyway, because I've already seen this season. Like I said, never finished season 7, but I did finish this one. And that is not to say that season 7 is bad. It's just I stopped watching. I just stopped watching. I'm sorry. That's the best I can give you. Also, Mac is apparently watching re-recordings of Coulson with advice in order to be able to pep himself up. So that's nice. And also, we need a department head. So later on, while Mac is at the bar, May apparently already knows who the department head is going to be, and apparently it's going to be a guy named Benson. So we head over to him. However, he doesn't really want to join us until we mention deep space. It's like, ooh, he's interested instantly once we mention the fact that the team of us is just in deep space. But he basically needs to take over for Andrew. Basically the stuff that Andrew was doing as well. We kind of need that as well for the team. So we bring him back to the base. Meanwhile, more baddies show up. However, this time they don't come out of walls. And then the woman who is there is like, oh, he's with the butterflies now. It's like, what is wrong with you? And her name is just, it's funny. Her name is funny. I'll say that right now. But her name is Snowflake, which is just, so she's a snowflake. Oh, man. Can't help it. Meanwhile, inside of the machine, Simmons finds a clue. And she uses that and finds a location. The problem is that location is in deeper space. Like, really deep in space. And maybe we should not go there. So, the team is basically like, no, while Simmons is like, yes. However, before we can really get into it, a Confederate ship flies above us. So, we now have to play dead, as you could say. However, that ship, sadly enough, did spot us. So, it's making a return, aiming its gun and firing at us. And now we need to teleport away. So, Piper turns on the teleporter. And then now we can go to Earth. However, Simmons has a little bit of different location typed in. And she teleports the squad deeper into space, which might mean we'll never be coming back, sadly enough. Meanwhile, Benson examines the wall guy. However, he comes back to life for a quick second here, and he says that someone is coming, and I am not gonna say that name, but that is the name of the dude who will eventually be known as Sarge. So basically, Sarge is coming, and then he dies again. However, because of all that, something falls out of his pocket, so they pick it up, and it's like, we got a location and a timer on it. So basically, Sarge is coming at that location in that number of time. And turns out, it's at a museum where also the baddies from earlier are heading for. So time to head for the museum. So we arrive at the museum. However, Snowflake is going to be like, oh my god, there's my son, please help me, as a distraction so that they can set up the bomb and just completely bomb the whole museum. So a lot of people died there as well. And then from the ashes, a giant truck just plows through, and out comes Sarge. And he looks a little bit familiar because he looks exactly like Phil Coulson, baby. Yep, Clark Gregg is back. We got one of those doppelganger situations with this one. However, Sarge shoots someone. May sees him. He gets back into the truck with Snowflake, probably also the rest of the squad that was there as well. And then he drives off in this really cool Mad Max style big truck. And why they are here is unknown, but Coulson's back. And then in the post-credit scene, we have the fact that Fitz is working in this place and he's got big eyes. So I guess maybe the next episode is either they're gonna follow Sarge, or maybe we're gonna see what Fitz has been up to in this last year. Alright, before we get into episode 2, I just want to say something funny, because it took about 6 seasons for Disney Plus to finally realize you can skip the intro, the recap stuff. For 5 seasons on Disney Plus, which is where I have been watching this, I have not been able to skip the recaps, like by clicking the button on Disney Plus. But now, with season 6, they finally implemented it. My goodness, and only for season 6 so far. Oh my god, I've been waiting for that forever. I always had to see the recap because I didn't want to skip anything noteworthy, but now I could just click on skip. Anyway, into the episode. So Team Sarge does some shopping, baby. Yes, indeed. But they're not gonna pay for it, obviously. And they got back into their truck, and their truck turns invisible. Also, one of the members of the team, called Pax, he isn't really happy about how things have gone. And he basically just now got that last part. But Sarge intimidates him enough in order to be able for, well, I guess just the plan to go on as was promised beforehand. Meanwhile, Benson thinks that maybe the bad guys are LMDs. However, after finding some DNA inside of one of them, the wall guy, yeah, it turns out they're not LMDs. And also, apparently, the DNA that they have for this Sarge fellow is an exact match to Coulson. And that only leads me to believe one single thing. Multiverse, baby, yeah. I mean, it is the next saga, so might as well start teasing a little bit of that now. To be honest, they've been doing a way better job here at teasing multiversal stuff than they did in the actual multiverse saga. God. It's just so funny that here they have handled, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. alone, I mean, they've handled multiverse stuff better than the multiverse saga, outside of Spider-Man No Way Home and Deadpool and Wolverine, which went full-on multiverse, and I guess Doctor Strange as well, but that movie is meh. Outside of that, it's like, no multiversal stuff in the multiverse saga. Meanwhile, Fitz pretends to be one of the aliens that he is with. However, after he gets scared by a snail, Xandarian snail, he becomes found out because apparently they are not supposed to be afraid of Xandarian snails. So, yeah, and apparently what he used in the last episode was a pupil dialer in order to change his pupils so that he can look like one of them. So now that he has been found out, the captain wants him off the ship. However, Fitz convinces him that he will work for free and that he is better than the entire crew. And after doing a couple of jobs for him, yeah, Vero, the leader of this place, notices it too, and he wants to throw off the rest of his crew, at least the engineers, because why am I paying you people? However, Fitz doesn't like that, and he decides to step up for them, and that doesn't really work. So then he puts them into place in order to open up the airlock, but Fitz gets in there as well. It's like, you're nothing without me. However, he did talk a little bit about Gemma, so he'll know. So Vero will probably find Gemma somehow and use her in order to be his engineer, which isn't really gonna be all that well because of the fact that, you know, Gemma was bio. Sorry, but Gemma's bio. However, what Fitz actually had done was he reversed it. So then when Vero activates the airlock, the other one opens up. So Fitz and the engineering crew are safe, and the rest of them all get flown out. And then Enoch is able to close the door. And now we are on our way to the planet that Gemma thought Fitz was going. So we're in good hands, boys. Also, we learned that Sarge has had a past life. So maybe he is Coulson after all, you know? I mean, at least a version of Coulson, let's just say that. But Sarge and crew, they need some tech, let's just say that. So they go to the jewelry store in order to be able to find what they need. However, they still aren't really able to find what they need, sadly enough. So they lock themselves into the vault, and eventually she's like, maybe down there's some topazes or whatever down there. And then it's like, this is what we need. All right, let's get it. However, May and Yo-Yo went to the actual truck graveyard, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know where this is. There's a bunch of containers and truck parts. However, they find nothing there. Then they learn about the jewelry store, so they take a team to the jewelry store in order to be able to stop them. However, 3 people or 4 people went in. However, there are now 5 heat signatures, so something is off. And then May realizes, wait, maybe they got some teleportation stuff because there's a wall open. So she heads back to where Yo-Yo and May were earlier. She finds the truck, goes inside, takes on basically the whole crew in her hunt for this fake Coulson, or Sarge as we'll call him. I do find it a bit weird that May was able to take on the whole team, but to be fair, it was always a one-on-one fight, so I'll let it slide. Also, I think Melinda May would do horrible things to me if I did not. But she does a good job fighting. She even frees the hostage. However, when Sarge comes in, she kind of freezes up, and when she says Coulson, he kind of freezes up. But they're able to put her back into the jewelry store vault and then take the portal device off in order to be able to escape fully. However, this also means that the team probably needs to move. And then later on, one of them is like, why did you freeze up when she said Coulson? It's like, well, it sounded familiar. So, we're still dealing with the fact that maybe this is a Coulson variant. And then to end the episode, we have 2 things. Number 1, apparently, the one guy in the wall, he had a video camera on him, basically. And the footage that we see is the fact that apparently Team Sarge destroys the worlds that they were on. So they go to a world, and they do whatever they need to do there, and then they destroy that world. And the other thing is the fact that Fitz and Enoch get close to the place where they need to go. However, in order to protect the engineers, they decide to take a detour and go to a different planet. And just as they are leaving, the team shows up. The space team shows up. And yeah, Fitz is not here anymore. He was supposed to be here, but not anymore. He's not. What a ridiculously long title. Anyway, here we are with episode 3. So the bounty hunter is apparently coming after Fitz. So that isn't nice at all. And also Enoch. But mainly Fitz. Apparently they are most wanted. So maybe getting Fitz back is going to be a little bit of an issue. So we dock on the planet, and we need to fill out some forms. However, the bounty hunter is here, and he wants Fitz, but we are able to overpower him thanks to Davis and tie him up. So we got him. We got the bounty hunter. That's good. Meanwhile, Fitz on the other planet of Kitson, that's the planet where we are going to be, they delivered a snail, and then they want to make it back to the other planet. Problem is, yeah, they are about to be robbed. However, the dude does give them actually a chip for gambling purposes, because baby, we're gambling. Yes, indeed. Fitz must gamble his way to victory, indeed. Also, because of the hunter, the squad now also knows that Fitz is indeed most wanted. So, Fitz and Enoch get to the casino. They want to go inside, however. No robots are allowed, but Enoch's programming allows him to bypass that, so there's no real problem there. So, we go inside, and we now have to gamble. And Enoch has seen a lot of these games, but he's never played one. However, turns out he can count, which, by the way, in case you don't know, it counts counting is a term for just cheating. It's like counting cards. It's cheating. So Enoch can cheat so we can get that W after all. The problem is Enoch loses because of the fact that he doesn't understand people in that sense. Because the dude is being very nice to Enoch and then leading him into a false trap called bluffing. Enoch doesn't know what bluffing is. So we lost all our money. So the gang learns where Fitz is and they head over to the planet of Kitson. So the team arrives. Also beforehand, while we were being robbed, Fitz wanted to try like a little bit of a candy, as you could say, but Enoch advised against that. So Daisy gets the information that she needs out of the one guy, and then Davis grabs the candy and he eats one, gives one to Daisy. Apparently Gemma ate one too. Piper decided not to. Smart woman. And now everyone is high, and that to me is the downfall for my personal taste of the episode. Because while being high can be sometimes funny, it's not episode funny, okay? It's sometimes funny, but it's not episode funny. Like, if a character is high and pops up like 3 times in the episode, fine. But when the main characters are high, for me, that just, I don't know. I don't like that, personally. So for me, this was actually the weakest episode of this season so far, and of the last season, and the season before that, and even the season before that. Every episode from all of those seasons 3, 4, and 5, I like more than this one, and those are all the ones that I've reviewed in 2025, because I don't remember seasons 1 and 2, because those were last year. Well, 2024, that's 2 years ago for you guys. So there's another way for Fitz to be able to get the money that we need. Let's go to the brothel, baby. And Fitz is immediately like, oh, absolutely not. No, we are not gonna sell our bodies, okay? That is absolutely degenerate, and we are not gonna sink that low, okay? We're not doing that. And then Enoch is like, okay, fine, there's another way. It's a high stakes game. And Fitz like, okay, let's try it out. Turns out, if you lose here, you'll be sold into slavery, or killed sometimes as well, because one guy actually gets a 4, which causes him to be killed. However, Enoch is gonna emit a noise that only humans can hear, which is also how we find Fitz towards the end of the episode. But one sound is for like stay, and like 2 sounds is for like do. I don't know the terms. I forgot the terms, so that's what the message you get. So Fitz actually makes a good impression early on. However, then Enoch gets shut down because of the fact that sadly enough, the bounty hunter got free, knocked out Davis, and has hacked Enoch. So Enoch is shut down. So then, before Fitz can lose, Enoch makes a noise, and that kind of gives away the fact that it's a robot. So everyone evacuates, except for Fitz and Enoch, because they are gonna be held prisoner right here in the gambling room until later. Also, eventually, Gemma and Daisy, they hear it. So then, other bounty hunters start coming here, and Daisy fights them off, whilst Gemma goes towards the sound in order to find her future husband-to-be. So Gemma talks a little bit with the guard at the door. However, thanks to inside the door, Enoch, who has apparently been banished, or whatever you want to, decommissioned, or whatever he is. He's basically just banished. He is feeling shame. However, Fitz is like, you are my best friend, and that causes Enoch to help. But the dude who got killed at the poker game, his blood is actually flammable. So Fitz smears it all over the door so that a spark from Enoch can ignite it, and the door blasts open. Fitzsimmons are back, baby! Yes, they are once again united. Hunter shows up, take Fitz, bye! It's like, no! Why? Dude, we have the whole, like, Sarge storyline that we still have to do. We only have 13 episodes. We don't got time to waste with stuff like this, okay? This is not seasons 4 and 5 where we can have a Ghost Rider storyline and then an Ada storyline, or a future storyline and then preventing that future storyline. You know, we have 13 episodes. We gotta go through this fast. So I didn't really like the fact that Fitz got taken, but let's see how the season handles it, obviously. And then to end the episode, Sarge, he shoots a beam up into the sky and apparently finds a location. So he's doing stuff. Let's just say that. So, since last time we had basically an entire episode in space, how about this time we go back to Earth for an entire episode? Don't worry, Daisy will appear again, and my goodness, the boy doesn't want to stay down, doesn't he? So, Deke is in the framework that he built, and with his best friend, and they are apparently fighting the Remoraids. However, the best friend dies, Deke takes out the Remoraids, and the most stupid way possible. Look, everything that he says and does in this section bothers me, because it's just like so over the top stupid in a way, but I love it as well. Don't worry about that one. However, afterwards a Kree appears, Zeke takes care of the Kree, and then we get such a hot Daisy down boy. And afterwards it is revealed that yeah, he apparently has a framework on his own, and he runs his own company with some stolen designs from S.H.I.E.L.D. But yeah, that's fun. I hate it's such a Deke thing to do, but like, I hate it as well that S.H.I.E.L.D. has let him get away with that for so long. Also, S.H.I.E.L.D. now knows that Sarge is looking for something because they also picked up on the blast and saw the dots as well. So let's see what he's been searching for, shall we? We've all been curious. I know I have been for sure. So Sarge kills a guy, and afterwards he heads over for Deke, which apparently is his next target because he's not from here. So the dead guy gets brought into S.H.I.E.L.D., and then when they cut him open, they see basically a bat inside of him, an alien parasite if you want to call it. And then the alien parasite, when they remove the knife, comes back to life. It flies around and eventually goes into the mouth of Yo-Yo's boyfriend, and we can't really cut it out, so Yo-Yo kills him. There you go. That's that storyline done. It's just, look, it's not really a main part of the episode, and I don't necessarily care that much. I'm more interested where the creature came from, which we don't get in this episode, and also what connection it has to Sarge. That's what I'm more interested in. But yeah, anyway, Deke is not from here, and Sarge thinks that is because of the fact that he is also infected with one of them parasites, I guess. However, he is not. He's just from a future that doesn't exist anymore, so an alternate timeline, let's just say that. Because initially, Sarge is there ready to kill Deke, but then Deke is like, "Hey, Coulson, my boy!" And I'm just like, you really didn't... I guess you didn't know about the fact that he was dead, but they haven't really kept him up on anything. However, eventually Deke kind of notices something wrong with the way that he talks. It's like, "So how is Agent Doug?" Oh, Doug is just Doug. It's like, okay, I need to leave, but you can't leave. So then Deke runs away and eventually is saved by his best friend, who turns out to be an undercover S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, who has apparently called S.H.I.E.L.D. here. So Mac and May are here with some agents who I don't actually know the name of, so just some agents. So initially this was just an extraction. However, since fake Coulson is here, now it becomes an attack boy, so we need to fight him. However, May decides to go after Snowflake, which, by the way, before we get started, okay, or before we continue on, I guess I've already started. Before we continue on, I will say the actress who portrays Snowflake is extremely hot. I don't know why, but that was just a thing that was on my mind when she was on screen. It is one of those moments where it's like, I can fix her. I probably can't, but that wouldn't stop me from trying. And as long as she doesn't kill me, who cares? Also, by the way, Deke has a girlfriend, and if you look at her, she's basically just Temu version of Daisy. She's got kind of like that same hair color. She's also a bit Asian, even though with Daisy it's a little bit harder to tell that she's Asian, but still, you know, like that kind of stuff. It's like we just got a Daisy, but it's like one of those like influencers, and ugh, I hate that word. I absolutely despise that word because it's a stupid word, which, by the way, is also why I hate the ending of the episode, but absolutely love it as well at the same time. I thought it was actually fun as well, but I hated it because I hate people like that. Anyway, May fights against Snowflake. She wins, and then Sarge shows up, so almost had him. Almost. So Deke is outside. He gets a call from his girlfriend, who is inside the building, doesn't know that the bad guys are here. So Deke puts on a body armor and goes back inside in order to save his woman, as he should. However, when he gets to her and he tries to get her out, he gets stabbed by, or at least like sliced by Pax. So then Mac appears and beats up Pax. I also love Mac's reaction throughout this episode about everything Deke has done. However, after Pax is done, Jacko appears, and since Deke unloaded an entire clip of icers into that Pax fellow, yeah, what do we do next? How do we take out Jacko? And then Deke is like, "I have an idea, come follow me." Also, my best friend, who turns out to be Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and maybe not even my best friend, take my girlfriend and get her out of the building. So Deke and Mac, they run and they turn a corner, which the other guy doesn't know. So Jacko goes inside and he gets put into virtual reality with extremely hot Daisy, which is also extremely funny as well. And the moment that Mac sees it, because there's a computer screen of what you see, Mac sees that and he's just like, "What is wrong with you?" He doesn't say it, but his face says it. And then to end the episode, apparently Sarge took May, so maybe next episode or the one after that. Look, I don't know when they're gonna come back from space, but maybe we're gonna get one of those like exchanges that is going to happen, because I'm actually interested to see how this is gonna go down, because maybe we have some of them, because we have the dude, the big guy, and we got the littler guy, so we technically have two of them. So we may be able to make a trade for May, and maybe we'll also be able to get some information about who these people actually are. So May has flashbacks of her time with Coulson in Tahiti while also being tied up by Sarge, and Snow gets sent on a mission to retrieve something that we will figure out later on. Enoch also still has panic attacks because, yes, we are once again doing the back and forth between Space Team and Earth Team, but he still has panic attacks about the fact that he has been decommissioned and been, you know, known as a traitor and all that stuff. However, as we are flying, we get hit by something from the Confederacy. However, turns out it's not the Confederacy. Instead, it is the Chronicoms. Wow, these are hard names. Led by Atara. And apparently, they want the way of time travel because of the fact that their home world is gone. So she wants to go back in time in order to save it. And also, they were the ones who kidnapped Fitz. And Fitz is still alive. Yay, Fitz. So initially, it's like, yeah, we're not gonna help you with that. But then Gemma's like, Fitz can build a time machine. But, like in the alternate timeline, he had motivation. Now he doesn't have motivation. So then she wants to know what the motivation can be. And then Enoch betrays us all and is like, well, Gemma's the motivation. Hold her captive. And then, Fitz will do whatever you say. Which is like, dude, I thought you were on our side. But then Daisy blasts everyone and we tried to make our escape, but it doesn't work. And Gemma's like, okay, fine. Okay, I'll turn myself in. However, the only way for the time machine to be able to be built is if Fitz and I are working together. Also, allow my team safe passage back home. So they go home without Fitzsimmons, sadly enough. Maybe we'll see them one day, who's to say. Meanwhile, Sarge is gonna torture May. At least that's the way it looks because he opens up a box full of knives in order to get some information out of her. But she doesn't really look that tortured afterwards, so I don't really think that he tortured her. However, later on, Snow comes back and everything is set in motion. And Sarge's like, okay, come with me, May. And then he takes her to a room with a guy and he's like, you're gonna kill this guy. And May's like, no, I'm not, dude. You're gonna be okay. Okay, trust me on that one. And then Sarge shoots him in the head. And then the dude comes back to life because he has one of those bats inside of him. So May now has to fight him. And she eventually, once he goes all spiky, kills him. And then Sarge is like, welcome to the team. And it's like, nobody ever said she was on your team, by the way. Just because she killed him doesn't mean that she's on your team. So then back at S.H.I.E.L.D., apparently Benson has figured out how these bats kind of work. And basically they die after 6 hours of paralysis. That is at least the way, like, you stab him and then 6 hours later the bat's dead. And also they are called S.H.I.E.L.D. and they are from another planet. However, once they crystallize, they kind of turn into something that's kind of like the monolith. So once again, still having something to do with it. They still haven't explained where these bad boys came from. Would be nice if this was actually the season where that was actually explained. Also, we learn of the fact that apparently that word, that Pachakutik, whatever that word is, apparently it means the death of everything, which I thought was Oppenheimer, but hey, who am I to say? But basically, Sarge and his team are trying to stop those shrieks from basically taking over worlds. And when they do, that is when Sarge purges the world. Also, we don't know who blew up the Chromicon planet. Could have been Sarge in order to tie the storylines together, or maybe it is something else for season 7 to figure out. Who's to say? So then later on, May tries to turn Snow against Sarge. Doesn't necessarily work. However, it does allow her to jump down, and then May kicks the table and knocks her out, and then frees herself, goes over to Sarge, tries to choke him out, doesn't really work. However, once the fighting begins, she overpowers him, wins, and now it's back to base, baby, with Sarge and also Snow. And then the space team also returns back home, and man, do we have a lot to catch you guys up on. However, Fitzsimmons are still gone. And then in the post-credits scene, we have Fitz in his cell, and Enoch goes over him, explains the situation. Fitz hates Enoch immediately, understandably so. And then Enoch gasses Fitz to end the episode. Best episode of this whole season. I don't care what anyone has to say. This is the best episode this whole season because it's entirely focused on Fitzsimmons and also what these people and also what Fitzsimmons had to go through in this episode. I will say anyone who is starting a relationship is going to have to go through something like this in order to fully solidify it, because that would eliminate the entirety of the divorce system 100%, because this is so much better than therapy. But let's get into it, shall we? So Fitz and Simmons are in a room together, and Atara appears and is like, you'll be in here to build a time travel machine, and also you have your memories shared, which Simmons has a bit of an issue with, looking at the fact of what happened last season. You know, it's maybe that's not really good for Fitz to know. So then once she's gone, Fitz goes up to Gemma and is like, will you marry me and all that stuff, and Gemma has a little bit of an issue with it because, like, it's a little bit of deja vu. However, the difference is the fact that this time the marriage proposal actually does come from Fitz, because last season when Fitz told Simmons, will you marry me, the whole marriage proposal, she was deaf, so at least now she can hear, and obviously she accepts. However, afterwards Fitz starts pressing her about the future, and she doesn't want to talk about what happened last season, and then she turns herself into a kid, and I'm like, oh boy, Fitz, maybe you should kind of cancel that marriage proposal. You know, look, Maybe it's not such a good idea to be married to a child. Just saying, maybe not the best idea. Maybe we should reel that one back in. But then Fitz later on understands that they are in a mind prison, and he tries to get Gemma to turn back into an adult, which does not work, until he starts to threaten, well, since it's a mind prison and all, maybe I'll just envision Ada, and then adult Gemma's like, don't you dare! Like, you're back. Fantastic. However, at that point, also a flashback happens, and this is basically what happened right after Fitz died. And Fitz follows the memory, and he sees himself being dead. And also the fact that him and Gemma were already married, at least the other version of him was married to Gemma. And this kind of ruins him a little bit. But then we go into a memory where it's the meeting of the two minds also. Gemma starts hearing kind of some boom, 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 which is very important. Very loud steps. That's the best way to describe it, I guess. But we get the meeting of the two, which is very nice to see. However, then the realization comes in that there's someone else here. We have an uninvited visitor. And that is the fact that if you remember from the last season, when Fitz took off the inhibitor from Daisy, yeah, Doctor's back, baby. He's back again. I'm so happy to see him again. I find his character so entertaining. The way that he is so different from regular Fitz. And I love the fact that it allows the actor as well to, you know, like, use his acting chops. Instead of being the same character throughout the show, in a sense, he's now able to just be the completely opposite of what his character normally is like. So yeah, he's back. So now we're running from him, and then we get to Gemma's room, and then a box falls, and an evil Gemma pops out, and Gemma explains that, well, I put my feelings all in a box. Any negative feeling that I had, I put it in a box. And I'm like, yeah, I can understand that. That is what I have been doing my entire life as well. I understand that completely. It is 100% unhealthy, but once you start, it's kind of like gambling. You can't really stop. So now we're running from that, and also running from the doctor. Also, by the way, forgot to say that. See it right now in the notes. The fact is, after Fitz saw the fact that he was dead, he also saw the fact that Coulson is going to die. So now he knows that Coulson is dead, and that just breaks him. So then we get into the lighthouse, which now Fitz learns that is our new base of operations. And then we go over to when Coulson recruited them, and that Fitz was initially like, well, I don't think we should do that. And Gemma was like, yeah, sure, let's go. And then the two of them get split up, and Fitz is being hunted by evil Gemma, while Simmons is being hunted by the doctor, because the doctor is like, oh, please. And Gemma's like, Fitz! And it's like, no, it's the doctor instead. So then the doctor puts her in the memory machine, and I guess tries to erase her memory, as she says later on. And evil Gemma decides to hang up Fitz and cut him open and literally pull out his heart. You said this one was mine. It's like, oh my god. But they eventually realize that this is a mind prison that they can also control. So they start envisioning the squad, and Gemma is like, alright, here's Daisy, baby. And Daisy saves them. Not the Daisy from the simulation from Dick, though, sadly enough. And Mac appears for Fitz and saves him as well, but then gets eaten by evil Gemma. So then they go into the containment pod, which is what I think last season I forgot the name of. But anyway, the containment pod. And then they start to argue together very much about how evil they are for each other, but also how much they love each other. And the fact that it's like, dude, your evil version is a Nazi. And then it's like, yeah, but yours just tore my heart out. What did I do wrong? Look, you killed his father, so I can kind of understand why he would want to go after you. But what did I do? So then they have this big argument until eventually Gemma mentions the one thing that she should not have mentioned, and that is when they drowned. So then water starts spilling in, and they continue to argue to each other about how, you know, like, you always save me, and you're always there for me as well, that kind of stuff, until eventually they're like, I love you and I love you too. And then they decide to face their fears together as one. However, when they get out of the containment module, their fears are basically making out with each other. The doctor is making out with the evil Gemma, so that's funny. But they did it, they won. And then later on they tell Atara, hey, we're not gonna make the machine that you want us to make, okay? We're not doing that. And then she's like, fine then, I'll separate you two. And then crashes because of the fact that Enoch has hacked the system. He then puts a thing down on the ground that the hunter used, and he's like, hold me. And they transport away. But right before that, Gemma's like, oh, by the way, you're a grandfather. He's like, what on earth is that supposed to mean? And then meanwhile, back on Earth, Mac basically tells Daisy that the ones who destroyed the Chromicon planet were were actually Team Sarge, I guess you could say. And that flashback that we actually saw from the memory thing was actually Team Sarge on their planet, destroying it. So, yeah. I told you the storylines could be linked. Turns out it was entirely true. But I loved this episode, the way that they had to go through each other's pain and trauma. Like I said, every single relationship that lasts a year needs to go through this right there. You have to go through it in order to truly learn who you are dating. And like I said, at that point, even though you see all of the fears of the significant other, you still might want to marry them. In that sense, you know, it's perfect. I mean, it will bring marriage therapists out of business, and also divorce lawyers have nothing to do anymore because of the fact that, you know, this needs to happen before the marriage. Like, before the marriage can happen, they need to go through something like this, and then they're allowed to be married. If they fail the test, they're not allowed to be married. But like I said, divorce lawyers will probably lose their jobs, and relationship therapists will also kind of lose their, or marriage therapists will also lose their jobs. However, no more divorce, so that is great. But like I said, this was 100% a fantastic episode. I love Fitzsimmons. I love the both of them, and you know, any episode that focuses on them, I am a big fan of. I just wasn't expecting a full episode about them, but I couldn't be happier. So the teleporter did not take us to Earth. It took us instead back to Kitson, where we are most wanted. Enoch, this is not one of your best plans, let's be honest here. So now we have to reprogram that thing. Problem is, an alien teleports away with it. So we're kind of stranded here. Now we need to gamble again, or just escape this planet somehow, some way. Meanwhile, May tells the squad everything she knows about Sarge, and Jocko gives us a little bit of a backstory on what happened to his home planet. Very nice to hear. So then Deke tries to talk to Daisy, and I would not have included this at all because I could not care less. However, it is a little bit important because Daisy lets it slip that they found Fitz, and it's like, what do you mean by that? And then he angrily goes over to Mac and is like, what do you mean my grandpa's dead and you found him again in space? What the hell, man? And then he also says that if he knew about the trip into space to find his grandpa, he totally would have gone along with it, which technically means that Simmons would have had some backup when they were arguing about going home or going to Fitz, you know? However, Deke gets put on tech duty because of the fact that we are missing Fitzsimmons, so we need them desperately. But hey, maybe the grandson could do us some help. So Mac tries to talk to Sarge. It doesn't really work. Then later on, he invites him over to his office, and they talk a little bit about Coulson, and also the fact that Coulson cares about his people and also about lives. And then Sarge is like, yeah, I don't. And then we also get the reveal that he truly just does not care about his crew. If his crew dies, that is not on him. It's about the mission, not about his crew. Meanwhile, in space, Fitzsimmons and Enoch meet Mr. Kitson. However, he has a game planned called Heads Off. Yes, it is exactly the guillotine that you expect. Basically, what is going to happen, by the way, a third guy enters as well in order to be also getting his head cut off. But basically, you hold on to the chain that cuts your head off, and the first one to give up loses in that sense. And I don't know what happens to the other two, if they are saved or not, but basically, whoever dies first, dies first. However, then a woman that we saw earlier in this episode named Izel pops in, and she's like, I want the Terrans. I know this game is rigged. Just give me the Terrans, and I'll pay you for him. So then he cheats and kills the third guy, so Fitzsimmons have survived. And then also, she buys Enoch because that is what Fitzsimmons wanted, and she wants to go to Earth because there are some artifacts there from her planet that she would like to get back. Seems like a simple deal. However, by the end of the episode, we learn the fact that, well, first of all, she doesn't have a ship, so we go to the guy who has been in a couple episodes already in order to get a ship, and he's like, well, okay, your friend broke my fingers. I'll give you a ship, any ship you want. You want the ship? Take it. Just don't hurt me anymore. However, we need to go to Earth, and this might not get us there, but she has a warp drive, so we will get there. However, Enoch is then like, yeah, I will stay behind. I've completed my mission. I will help my people find a new home. So they are coming home, baby. But that is actually the post-credit scene that I just talked about. So what's happening back on Earth? Well, on Earth, there are two strikes about to meet up. I keep wanting to call them strikes, but still, they want to meet up, and we kind of need to stop that from happening. So we split up in two teams. May is team 1, Yo-Yo is team 2. Let's head over there and we bag and tag them. And then what we do is we put them in the same room to get together in the containment module. That is just the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my life. Because, like, you know they want to meet up. And what do? You put them together. This is so dumb. This is really stupid. So then, obviously, as predicted, they start to kind of fuse together. Also, back on base, Jocko can apparently breathe fire, but Daisy was able to subdue him, and Mac was able to put out his fire, so that is fun. But basically, the Shrieks then kind of fuse together into a gigantic bomb, trying to kill everyone. However, we need to find a way to save them, so we need Sarge. And Sarge's like, give me my crew and my truck, and I'll give you the potential safe, because of the fact that it's unknown how far it's gone already. You know, it may not work, may work. And then he's like, okay, fine. He's like, okay, fine, Colt. You need Colt. And to be honest, when they started kind of streaking together, I was like, why don't we just go up in space and jettison the thing? You know, just eject it in space. I wasn't wrong with my guess. We could have gone into space once they started fusing and they tried to get out of the containment module. You know, we could have just frozen them in space. You know, the Zephyr can go into space, so we could have gone into space, jettisoned them out, go back into Earth's atmosphere, and go back to base. But I guess nobody really thought about that. But now we made a deal with the devil, so technically Sarge did get what he wanted. He was in control. However, he still warns that the creator of these shrikes, they are coming to Earth. Whoever the creator is, that is. But I know who the creator is, but that is all for the future, because I am done for today. I'll do the other 6 episodes tomorrow. New day, who's ready for first out of 2-parter, because that's what we have today. So starting off the episode, in order to teleport, we have about a 50-50 shot at survival and 50-50 shot at basically being dead. However, we have to do it, so we teleport. Now we are close to the moon, very close to Earth. We are almost there. You can see the big blue ball. Oh my god, Fitzsimmons are almost home thanks to this woman named S.H.I.E.L.D, who is totally not the bad guy, but she is though. She is definitely the bad guy. Meanwhile, on Earth, Mac eventually gives in to Sarge, gives him all the stuff that he needs, kind of. He gives him the truck back. And one member from his crew, and he picks Snow, because have you seen her? She is the most attractive one. I'll pick her too. Which is kind of funny, because later on, he instantly regrets his decision. He's like, I should have had Pax. I needed Pax. It's like, why didn't you pick Pax? You picked Snow. Of all the people, you decided Snow. You could have just picked Pax. However, Mac wants May and Daisy to go with him as well. But like I said, he needs Pax in order to repair something. So Mac also sends Deke on this mission as well, which Deke is not really happy about. And, well, you don't say no to Mac. Look at that big teddy bear. So then we get the truth revealed, boys. We get the truth. S.H.I.E.L.D is the bad guy. She's the one who created all of the, I'm just gonna call these things bats, because I don't actually have their name in my notes, because I didn't really need to write them down. But, the bats. She basically created the bats. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a problem, and she's apparently coming to a specific location on Earth. Also, Mac promised to stay on base while Sarge goes and does his thing. The problem is the fact that, you know, Zephyr 1 is the mobile base, so technically he wasn't lying. What a guy, using the loophole. I love him. Also, Sarge doesn't care that he is identical to Coulson at all, which, you know, Daisy questions him about. And Daisy questions him so much that he's eventually like, get into the back. Okay, I don't need you up in the front anymore. Okay, stop answering these questions. Meanwhile, on the spaceship, S.H.I.E.L.D reveals that she is searching for the Dialis. And the Dialis are basically what we know as the monoliths. And apparently they were created on her world. However, they then got stolen or whatever, and now they're on Earth. But basically they were created on her Earth. So it's like, cool. Her world now, we got the answer. We got the answer, boys. Yes. This is the one thing, the one question that I had since, I don't even know when. Season 2's ending of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, I think actually is when we got introduced to the monoliths. So basically that. I was excited to learn about the monoliths, and now we learn where they come from, kind of. And it actually was already revealed last season. However, it kind of went over everyone's head. Also, S.H.I.E.L.D has turned the entire crew, and Fitz and Sims are trying to fix the communication so that they can communicate with the people on Earth. And I was like, oh, that's how they're not gonna have the ship blow up. No, communications are broken. They don't work. But yeah, like I said, S.H.I.E.L.D has turned basically the whole crew. Even the candy man, he has a secret stash of candy, grabs it, he eats the candy, and then he gets turned by S.H.I.E.L.D. And also, when they were fixing the communications, or at least trying to, Fitz is just so funny. Fitz is just like, oh, okay, so you had a wedding, and it was perfect, and I wasn't even there. And it's like, dude, are you jealous of yourself? He's like, yes, I am. I know how stupid it sounds, but I am jealous of myself. And she's like, well, the first time was nothing like the second time. And Fitz is like, I wasn't good enough the first time. I'm like, I fell out of my chair. I fell out of my chair. That's so shocking. First, he is super jealous of him, and then he was inadequate the first time. It's just so funny. She can't win in this situation. Because no matter what Gemma says, if she says their honeymoon and their, like, you know, wedding was absolutely perfect, Fitz is gonna get jealous. And when she says we're gonna do it better the second time, Fitz is gonna be angry because he wasn't good enough the first time. It's like, no matter how you look at it, he's not in a good position. But it was so funny that I actually wrote it in the notes. I love these two characters together. Also, we learned that Sarge wasn't the one who destroyed Chronica 2. It was actually S.H.I.E.L.D, because her plan eventually leads to the world being destroyed. Sarge arrived too late, sadly enough. And we are getting close to the location where the end of the world is going to begin, because of the fact that a big tower sprouts up after, you know, the bats do their things, waiting for their queen, I guess you could say. And basically, once that tower is big enough, it will destroy the planet, or at least leave the planet in a wasteland. And Sarge has a plan. He's gonna stab her with a blade. And it's like, really? That's your plan? Okay. But Pax keeps saying that there's a different plan. So what is that different plan? Turns out the secret plan that Sarge has is the fact that he has a bomb on his truck that is going to blow up a chunk of the planet, and like 200 miles or whatever they said, 200 yards. I don't know American measurements, okay? I don't live in America. I live in the rest of the planet, you know, where we have, you know, kilometers and all that stuff. We don't have feet, okay? I mean, we do. We technically do. But we don't have, like, that as a measurement, because feet come in different sizes, so it's a horrible unit of measurement, okay? Because what is a feet? You know, like, my feet are bigger than a child's feet. However, Mac's feet are bigger than my feet. So what's a feet, you know? it makes no sense. Anyway, basically, it's gonna destroy a piece of the world in a way, or at least leave a big crater, as you could say. But he will do that in order to take out S.H.I.E.L.D, because he hates her. Because I think he actually revealed in this episode that she killed his family, so that is why he is doing this. So that gets back to the crew on the truck, and Deke, after almost hooking up with Snow, which, understandable, would do the same thing easily, you lucky bastard. They tie her up, and they try to get Sarge to give the answer, but Sarge is like, no, and he escapes, and he goes up to the top of the truck where there's a big red circle. It's a weird circle. It's more of an oval shape, I think. However, Jocko and Pax were able to escape until, you know, Yo-Yo put them back in their cages in that sense. However, he was able to put his jacket out there, and the jacket is apparently where Sarge is gonna come out of. So that was always his plan. He was gonna have the truck, drive it to the tower, destroy it, and potentially S.H.I.E.L.D as well. And then after that is done, he was gonna teleport to our base and probably take it over. But he gets on the plane, which is apparently way better. So, yeah. Maka needs to make a decision. Is he gonna blow up the spaceship, blow up the truck, or maybe he's gonna be fun and attack the tower itself? Who knows what he's gonna do? And then in the post-grad scene, we have the reveal that the Chromicons apparently have Fitz and Simmons' brains because of the fact that they were in that machine. So basically, while they were in the machine, my guess is they were also copying their brain. So they will be able to invent time travel now, which is like, oh, that's not a good thing. So what is the actual plan, and what is Mac going to do? Well, he's gonna do nothing because Yo-Yo has a plan. Yo-Yo wants to use the Quinjet in order to get close to the truck, because we can't use this ever, in order to be able to extract the people from the truck so that at least we can save them potentially. Also, we are busy evacuating the town as well. We've alerted law enforcement to be able to do that kind of stuff so that hopefully we can get the casualties to a minimum. Also, S.H.I.E.L.D just tells Fitz and Simmons about the fact that she took over the crew. It's just an instant thing. Also, she doesn't gonna do it to Fitz and Simmons because apparently she likes the fact that they're smart and they can help her. But the other ones are stupid. So, yeah, that's good to know. Good to know. So I would be one of those zombie guys as well, because I am also not smart, sadly enough. Also, we learned that the bomb inside of the truck is not just a bomb. It is an atom bomb, baby. Yes, that is why it's gonna give us such a huge explosion. And now Deke has to go and defuse the bomb. Also, Sarge has a shield against Yo-Yo's powers, so they take over the bridge, and then he puts it down in order to protect them so that Yo-Yo can't get in there. No one can really get in there. It's basically just a force field. But they take over the Zephyr 1 and fly it away from the location. However, before Yo-Yo can leave on the Quinjet, she sees that the people have escaped and that the soldiers on the ground, so we're in some trouble. So she heads over to Pax in order to be able to, you know, take out the bad guy. So Deke, sadly enough, can't defuse the bomb. Everyone is having a little bit of a panic attack, and right before the crash happens, Daisy goes over to the bomb and uses her quake powers, and then the truck crashes through the building, but no boom, because of the fact that Daisy's been using her powers in order to make it so that the bomb did not feel anything, so it didn't go boom. So obviously, Sarge is really upset about that. However, S.H.I.E.L.D is also not happy about the fact that her tower is destroyed, and she instantly wants to, you know, blame Fitz and Simmons, and they're like, no, wait, it wasn't us. We didn't do it, okay? So she's like, either Earth is more formidable than I thought. Or he's here. And I'm like, both. We've been through about 52 projects so far in the MC, okay? It's both. We've seen how powerful Earth can be. It is most certainly both, but it is this second one also. But she's not happy about that, so she wants Fitzsimmons to fix the communications faster. So Yo-Yo brings Pax up to the bridge. I think that is actually what it's called. And then pushes him up against the force field so that they are forced to open it up. So Jocko opens up the force field. Yo-Yo goes inside in order to give Mac the key, and then obviously it goes back. However, Sarge then shoots Pax and tells Jocko to find Yo-Yo. So he goes and searches for her. However, when he finds her, she tries to convince him to join their team, and it works. It actually does work. That is very nice. I mean, Jocko was always such a nice guy, kind of. He's likable, as he says later on in the episode. Meanwhile, Fitz and Simmons have finally fixed the communications, and Fitz is like, hey, the distress code, that hasn't changed, right? No. Okay. So they make contact with Zephyr 1, and it's like, S.H.I.E.L.D 221 or something like that. They sent the distress code, but the funny part is they also sent the distress code back because they're both kind of in a problematic endeavor. So now, Fitz and Simmons and also the people at S.H.I.E.L.D know that both sides are in big trouble. And then we have a little conversation between S.H.I.E.L.D and Sarge, and she says something about the fact that he has no memories. So we're not done with this yet. There's still a mystery between the two of them that we have yet to solve. So then Mac frees himself, fights Sarge, almost loses, but he is able to come out on top. And then Jocko has officially joined our crew, and the S.H.I.E.L.D goes down, and now we're all together, and we're gonna go and take on the evil witch. Meanwhile, at the truck, they're being pelted by the bats because they want to get in order to, you know, use their bodies. However, we're blocking everything off until Daisy's like, look, I'm gonna just open up the back. And then the bats all fly in, and Daisy uses her powers in order to destroy them all. And then we get a little bit of a dialogue that I kind of did not like because it is untrue. I don't like lies, okay? We're not gonna prop up a sex because of the fact that one of them is really strong, okay? Because Snowflake is like, are all women on this planet this strong? And May's like, yes. I'm like, oh god, no. No, not even close. Most men aren't even that strong. Come on, let's be honest here. No one is as strong as Daisy, okay? We have a select few that are as strong as Daisy. Most men and most women, at least the normal ones, aren't like that. And with the normal ones, I mean all of them aren't like that, okay? Only super powered beings are able to get onto on the level of Daisy. So, no, most women are not that strong. Don't lie to me. If most women were that strong, they wouldn't be in toxic relationships. So now that they are all dead, we can finally escape. But we're not gonna do that just yet. For some reason, they actually stay in the truck. But since Zephyr 1 is already flying up, they use the Quinjet. It looked like the Quinjet in order to get to the ship where S.H.I.E.L.D is at. In order to save Fitz and Simmons, they get in. Jocko's obviously on the team. And they split up. And Team 1, that being Mac and Yo-Yo, and I think there was someone else there as well, but maybe not. They find Fitz and Simmons, save them, and then Mac just hawks Fitz and doesn't want to let go because, you know, it's his boy, it's his best friend, you know. Meanwhile, Davis and Jocko find S.H.I.E.L.D. They want to go upstairs in order to take her on, but she has vanished. So we go back, she's gone, so we're not done with the season yet, even though we have basically a W at the end of this episode. However, we need a way to get off this ship, and all of the zombie monsters, I don't know what you call them, walkers maybe? I don't know, that might be copyright with Walking Dead. Doesn't matter. Anyway, we're surrounded by them, so we get into a room, lock the door, and then Jocko puts up his jacket, and then we go to the top of the truck. So now the squad is back together, and Fitz gets inside, and then Deke is like, "Bow wow!" And then Fitz is like, what now? Which I thought funny. But yeah. But then, before we can fully celebrate, Jocko grabs the atom bomb, creates another one of those portals, says goodbye to Snow, goes through, and blows himself up with the ship in order to kill S.H.I.E.L.D. So maybe she's dead. Who's to say? There's a chance that she's dead. So W, boys, we won. We beat her. Alright, fantastic. In episode 9. Yep, we beat her in episode 9. So what is going to be happening for the rest of the season? Well, technically, we could still deal with the Chronicom stuff, okay? Because that was also part of the season. So technically, we could have won. We could have had the W, but it's unknown for now. We have to wait until the next episode until we fully learn what actually the problem is. But we do have a party. However, once Deke and Snow want to go to the grandparents, as you could say, Daisy's like, why is she not locked up? up. Hey, lock her up. So, Snow, sadly enough, also gets locked up. R.I.P. the gal. Well, not necessarily R.I.P., but still. R.I.P. the gal's freedom. But we all have a yay, we did it, we beat them. And then to end the episode, we also have Deke, who gives her a gigantic TV. So, okay, cool. They're still together. And also, Mac apologizes to Yo-Yo. And then in the post-credits scene, May walks up to Sarge. Oh, by the way, Davis is also a little bit sick. Could have happened because of all the stuff he experienced in the spaceship, you know. He's just a little bit under the weather. And May walks up to Sarge and just unloads into him. She just has a gun and she is not stopping until that clip is empty, I don't think. So alarms start blaring because of the fact that May shot Sarge. So he gets taken away. May gets put in a room as she, you know, would. However, there's something off about Sarge. He's not dying. He's actually coming back to life and he is healing apparently as well. So a little bit of a weird one, but his heartbeat is increasing instead of decreasing. And also, something was off with May because she wouldn't use a gun, you know? It does nothing here lines up. And then we get the true answer, and that is the fact that May just pops back and is like, what happened? Where am I? Why am I here? I was on my way to my room, and then I got here. The last thing like I saw before I went to my room was Davis. And oh no. Yep, S.H.I.E.L.'s still here, baby. That's why she was not found. Because apparently what happened was that Davis, back on the ship, saw S.H.I.E.L. He chased her down. However, she then went inside of his body because apparently she could just do that now. And that's when they met up, Jocko and Davis. So that's why it looked like she had vanished. And that is also why I guess that Davis was getting a little bit sick in the last episode. But then she jumped into May in order to shoot Sarge. Afterwards, she went into this black woman and she's now inside a Piper. And she grabs a fragment of the thing. Also, Mac instantly puts the lighthouse on lockdown. And it seems like we had a little bit of a bonding moment between Fitz and Deke. So that was a little bit nice. It was also awkward, but it was also nice. And for Deke, it's probably doubly awkward because last time he tried to bond with his grandpapa, he didn't want anything to do with him. But since she's now inside a Piper and she has one of those things, she's trying to do something. However, Deke finds her and I don't know what she wants to do with the shard and water, but Deke tells her, hey, don't do that. And then S.H.I.E.L.D goes from Piper into Deke and then walks off, then finds this locked door which she wants to go inside of. And by the way, that locked door leads to the fear dimension. So then everyone gets called in and we all think that Deke is the bad guy, but Mac has a perfect idea, or at least the perfect idea gets told. You need to tell a secret about yourself and someone needs to be able to confirm it. So obviously we start with the Inhumans, Daisy and Yo-Yo. They get their secrets kind of spilled out and confirmed, so Mac takes them, locks them up, because if they get possessed, who knows what S.H.I.E.L.D could do, you know? Maybe S.H.I.E.L.D can actually use their powers as well, who knows? So it's better just lock them up. So who is the real one? Turns out it's Fitz, because Fitz doesn't want to answer. And then S.H.I.E.L.D goes from person to person in this entire room, trying to find out who the leader is, and also figuring a way to get the leader and escape. So eventually, she takes it so far to be once again inside of Davis, and then she lets Davis fall while she stays behind. So Davis falls and dies, and I'm like, that fall shouldn't have killed him though. That doesn't really look like a killable fall. I mean, obviously, he was gonna have like a broken something, okay? You know, he was gonna have a broken something, like maybe arm, maybe leg, maybe Willie, who's to say? But like death? Sure. But yeah, R.I.P. the boy, by the way. And then she gets into Mac, and she puts a gun to her own head, and is like, because obviously that's not gonna affect S.H.I.E.L.D. And she's just like, if you follow me, I'll kill him. So she then goes back to that room, and now Fitz and Deke try to figure out what happened, and they actually do. Because what that actual place is called the Fear Dimension was not actually a link to Gotham City. No, indeed. It was actually basically a way into a different realm, kind of. However, the last of the monoliths, I'm trying my best to explain this, because this goes a little bit above my pay grade, since I'm not getting paid on YouTube at all. But the thing is that basically when the monolith and the other one, all three of the monoliths exploded. One was space, one was time, the other one was Giratina. Apparently the third one was actually creation. So it created a Coulson copy when Coulson shut down the device. It created a Coulson copy and sent it through time and space into the realm where apparently S.H.I.E.L.'s people have no form. They don't have any form. But then one of them got stuck inside of this new Coulson and forgot who he was. And then that got sent, I guess, out of the realm years ago to like our realm in that sense. And the only thing that he could remember was the fact that he lost his family to S.H.I.E.L.D. That is all that he remembered, because the only thing that he remembered inside of his brain was S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, indeed, boys, it is officially revealed that Sarge was actually the Paki, Lucky, whatever it was supposed to be. I don't know how to pronounce it, but him. And I think I actually kind of already said this in the first episode spoiler talk kind of thing. The beginning of the spoiler talk. I said that where it's like, I told it that I was like, he says a word, and actually that word is Sarge, and that was actually a big spoiler. I didn't know that was what that was. It's just, I thought that he was talking about, I think it was Pax actually who said that. I thought Pax was saying that Sarge is coming, and that was Sarge's real name. Big spoiler I revealed early on. Oopsie. Meanwhile, Sarge wakes up. Gemma has him in a different room because of everything that is happening. He wakes up, and he eventually breaks his hand in order to free himself, and then he knocks out Gemma in order to escape and go over to S.H.I.E.L.D in order to kill her, but then she lore dumps the second half of what I just said. Also, S.H.I.E.L.D gets to the room, locks Mac because with the handcuffs, and then knocks him out before she goes inside. But anyway, she wants him to join her again because apparently they were lovers back in the other dimension, and he doesn't want to do it. And also, the stuff that he remembers about his family was actually S.H.I.E.L.D because he is actually a copy of Coulson. However, Sarge doesn't want to join S.H.I.E.L.D at all. He's like, nah, I'm gonna kill you still. However, S.H.I.E.L.D then walks outside, and that's where S.H.I.E.L.D is at, the Inhumans at least, and she wants to take over Daisy's body. But Yo-Yo wants to stop her, but instead Yo-Yo gets taken over. And then Mac is like, I'll go as your hostage. Let's leave this building and get into the plane, because she wants to get into the plane. So they get into the plane, and it's like, goodbye, good sir. And then in the post-credit scene, something is happening to Sarge's body, and he's still like, no, I don't believe her. It's not true. It is not true. But sorry, Sarge, it's true. But now we have to figure out how to save Mac and stop S.H.I.E.L.D, and we have 3 episodes left to go. And I find it actually kind of funny that this series is this season at least is able to do the 13 episodes a lot better than most Netflix seasons. It's actually surprising because this is the first time them attempting something like this. You know, we got some talent behind the scenes. Problem is, this season is less compelling than the last couple of ones, but I'm still interested. I'm still locked in. I can't wait for the next 3. Apparently, S.H.I.E.L.D, while possessing Yo-Yo, beat up Mac. So now Yo-Yo is like, no, Mac, what happened? And apparently S.H.I.E.L.D wants to get to a specific temple, but she doesn't know which one. So then Yo-Yo is like, wow, well, without Benson, she will never know. And then S.H.I.E.L.'s like, oh, thank you for the information, because she was still possessing Mac. So now she needs to get Benson. Also, Fitzsimmons and Deke are on the mission to prevent S.H.I.E.L.D from taking over bodies, but they can't figure it out. And also, May apparently is trying to turn Sarge into Coulson, which doesn't work because he ain't Coulson. So S.H.I.E.L.D, as Mac, picks up Benson, and you know, it's one of those things where it's like, if you tell him, I will kill someone. But Yo-Yo tries to signal him anyway that it's not him. Mac's not the good guy. So then S.H.I.E.L.D just kills someone and locks up Mac and Yo-Yo in order to get the information out of Benson. However, Benson will not squeal. He will not talk at all. No information. And death is also something he isn't afraid of. So now she needs to figure out another way to make him afraid. So Daisy has a different approach about how we go to Sarge, because May wants to get Coulson back, but Daisy's like, no, we should probably just let the power out that can kill S.H.I.E.L.D, because Sarge can kill S.H.I.E.L.D, so it would be nice, you know, to have that kind of power working for us. But May is afraid because of the fact that that was also what S.H.I.E.L.D wants, because while yes, Sarge can kill S.H.I.E.L.D, it's only once the other guy, the Plakalaka, has taken over. So yeah, and then he may not be on our side, but she gives Daisy the okay, because if this falls back, it's all on you. Technically, if this falls back on them, potentially everyone is going to be dead. So that is not a bet that really can be lost in that sense. If I lose, we're all dead, so I can't pay up anyway. So S.H.I.E.L.D has a different plan. She's gonna open up the quote-unquote fear dimension in order to let Benson's fear out, and let's see what that is. Oh, dead husband, of course. Why wouldn't it be? And S.H.I.E.L.D kills the dead husband in order to get the information out of Benson, because this will replay over and over again until Benson basically gives in. And he does give in. He gives her the location. So now Yo-Yo and Mac need to get Benson at least out of there. So they have an idea. So once S.H.I.E.L.D is done with Benson, she wants to put him in the pod, but when she opens the door, Yo-Yo goes out, grabs the orb, goes back inside. Then S.H.I.E.L.D possesses Yo-Yo and then throws Mac out of the pod, goes out of the pod herself, but then Mac is like, haha, made you look, and drops the pod, just ejects it, because we need to get Benson out of here. But sadly enough, you already gave her the location. So time to head where we are supposed to go for the finale, at least for the next episode. Because can you believe there's only 2 episodes left? This is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The season doesn't have this little of episodes. Come on, man. It is so weird that it's just like 13 episodes. Normally I had to rush these in order to be able to get it done, but now I can just leisurely like watch these episodes. Feels good. However, Daisy, sadly enough, has a little bit of an issue with the whole Sarge and letting out his true power. So she needs a different approach. So after a little bit of a talk with Gemma, she goes back to her room, opens up the letter from Coulson, and thanks to that, she goes back to Sarge and breaks his neck. And it's like, okay, yes. That is, I don't think that's what the letter said, but a good attempt, maybe? I don't know. It's just like, what was in that letter, dude? She broke the dude's neck. Was it that bad of a letter? He insults you or something like that. But she does that because she wants Sarge to remember more. Because the thing is, when Sarge died before, he started to remember the Coulson life. So now she wants that to happen again. However, this time when he comes back, he doesn't give her the answers that she needs. And he also hits her out of the way because he has super strength. And then opens up the door and then he tries to leave. But Daisy goes after him in order to stop him and potentially kill him. However, once he says Sky, she freezes because like, oh no, Coulson, why? So now Sarge is gonna work potentially with S.H.I.E.L.D. At least that's the way that it looks, because of the fact that maybe we can still use him in order to be able to take out S.H.I.E.L.D. Meanwhile, Deke and Fitz and Simmons, they're trying to figure out what to do, and they can't really do anything until Deke is like, shush, 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 shush. No, it is what Sarge said. It's the sound. So Deke hits the blade on the table, and it's like, it's the sound frequency. That is how she possesses bodies, through sound. So now we need to make an anti-sound barrier kind of thing. Also, S.H.I.E.L.D. gets to the temple that she needs. She activates the device in the temple, and we learn that apparently she wants to recreate the monoliths. However, she can't do that, and Mac and Yo-Yo have to do that through their fears, because that way is the only way to summon them from the fear dimension. However, they're not afraid of that. What they are afraid of, sadly enough, is Flint, my boy. He's back. Meanwhile, the hunters up in space, remember them? They kill Atara, and they have a different plan in mind. Something about getting a new planet or something like that. So, that is not the best thing. So, S.H.I.E.L.D. learns that Flint can build stuff, so she possesses him in order to rebuild the monoliths. Which is entirely predictable the moment that we saw him at the end of the last episode. This was going to happen. Deke also has a lot of these belt things, and instead of belts, they're more like the slap on the wrist kind of thing. I don't remember what those things are called, but I remember having them as a kid. You slap them on the wrist, they just wrap around it, those kind of thing. And also, we have special bullets that are gonna splinter. It's kind of like those bullets from Luke Cage, which were also used in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the ones that go inside of Luke Cage and eventually explode, those. And also Sarge, sadly enough, is our best hope at stopping S.H.I.E.L.D. So let's hope he pulls through for us. Yay, team! May also has a little bit of a secret plan, and that is the fact that she wants Sarge, or whatever is inside of Sarge, I guess, gone, so that maybe, just maybe, we can get Phil Coulson back. But that's not gonna happen, because that would truly undo the ending of season 5 with the death of Coulson. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D. goes outside and she sends out her bets to find her an army of people. And luckily enough, apparently there's a town nearby. At least we learned that later on. Also, S.H.I.E.L.D. might be able to hear our communication, so it's better if we do not communicate anymore through walkie-talkie and all that stuff. But while S.H.I.E.L.D. is outside, Flint goes up and frees Mac and Yo-Yo. However, then S.H.I.E.L.D. possesses Yo-Yo and breaks one of Flint's legs. Even though he is fake, they still treat him as real, which is very nice. So Deke has an idea in order to get in behind S.H.I.E.L.D., or at least get into the room. So he takes his grandparents to his company that apparently he has in the basement of the lighthouse. And at this point, once the reveal is of the fact that the Deke drive, baby, the jump drive, Fitz becomes very upset and is like, you are just a thief, you're a hack. Most of these designs are mine. That kind of stuff, and I just found that very funny. But all the goodwill that Deke had with his grandpapa has been broken off, and that causes Deke to have a little bit of a breakdown. Also, the squad that goes to the temple is attacked by walkers. I'm just gonna call them walkers. However, they are able to fight them off, and Daisy then has an idea. She's gonna cause a distraction, while May and Sarge are gonna go inside in order to stop S.H.I.E.L.D. Meanwhile, Deke is having a bit of a breakdown about the fact that nobody likes him, and the fact that Daisy doesn't like him, and the fact that apparently his girlfriend is a psychopath, and he's talking about the influencer one, not the actual psychopath, Snow. And then in that panic, he grabs the jump drive and he jumps to the temple and gives Yo-Yo and Mac one of those like belt things. I don't know what you call them, but he gives them protection. So instantly Yo-Yo just punches S.H.I.E.L.D. So I found that very funny. So then they try to get away with Flint, and S.H.I.E.L.D. just stays behind and starts to sing in order to open up a portal to her realm, I guess. So as they are trying to get out of the temple, they get into some trouble. So then Deke is like, I'm gonna act as a distraction, you guys get out. And then he is like, okay, I'm gonna teleport now. But he teleports behind them because apparently need 20 or 30 minutes of time. And Deke is like, why didn't you tell me that? It's because you jumped. It's just so funny between the two of them. I love Fitz and Deke together. But Deke eventually makes it to a Quinjet and just stays there. He can't really come home yet until anyone else comes to help. Meanwhile, Daisy returns to Zephyr 1. Also, Mac and Yo-Yo are on Zephyr 1 as well. And she wants to leave. She closes the ramp, but the zombies, they break the closing of the ramp, and then they go inside in order to attack them all. So we're a bit trapped. So May and Sarge make it to S.H.I.E.L.'s room, and Sarge is like, nah, she's mine. And he grabs her, throws her down, and he's ready to stab her, but he can't do it because of what's inside of him. And then May is like, look, that anger that you feel is love. And he's like, right, and I need to kill it. And he stabs May and throws her through the portal because she is the cause of the love that Coulson had for her. And then in the post-credit scene, apparently Enoch wanted to get a bunch of Chronicoms together that are kind of like the same function and that he has. However, it turns out all of them were turned into hunters, including his friend Isaiah. And then Isaiah attacks Enoch, so Enoch is not safe. But apparently Enoch wanted to do something, and I have no idea what Enoch is going to do, but I guess we'll have to figure that one out next time for the finale. Before we really get started on this final episode, I would like to give you my reaction to the ending, and that is what? Alright, now that we got that out of the way. Dude, what was that ending? What happened? I am so confused. I am so confused. How is this possible? Like, what? Okay. Anyway, let's get into the episode, shall we? So everyone is starting to get a bit sad about May. However, we can't really be too sad because of the fact that hunters have infiltrated the lighthouse. And when they said they wanted to get a new planet, it kind of seems like they meant this planet. And apparently the only ones who can stop them are S.H.I.E.L.D. So they want to eliminate S.H.I.E.L.D. And I'm like, well, we got the Defenders, the Avengers, you know, we got other heroes as well. So I don't know really if that is possible, but you know, sure, S.H.I.E.L.D. is their only defense. I mean, to be honest, a lot of these heroes are probably snapped away continuity-wise. Even though the snap is never officially mentioned, I don't care. I will still reference it. I have given my reason why. We just have to pretend that the places that we go to were not affected because the snap is that unknown, okay? Also, it's a year later, so maybe it has died down a little bit about the snap. But the fact is that when half the universe gets snapped away, like, is it also half of Earth, the people on Earth? Would everyone in the Netherlands survive, but would everyone in Belgium die? Is that how this would work? Like I said, I've talked about it before, and I'll talk about it again, that the snap doesn't really make sense if you really think about it, because who lives? Who dies? How is it decided? It doesn't necessarily work. So we're just gonna go with the fact that the places we'd visit are the least affected by the snap, okay? But anyway, they come in here in the lighthouse in order to hunt us down so that they can take over Earth, I guess. Also, Deke is going to have to fly the Quinjet over to the Zephyr because of the fact that they cannot get to him. Also, apparently on the other side of the portal, May's alive. She's just perfectly fine. She's like, oh my god, I'm okay. What happened? And then there are like 3 sages there, whatever you want to call them. And apparently they are trying to open up a big door in order to let all of the entities from this world out so that they can get to the portal, because why would you even close that door to begin with? Like, why would you close that door? Why wouldn't you just have that door open at all times? Just a question I have. So now May has to stop that, and she does that and throws the stones that they use through the portal. So then S.H.I.E.L.'s like, oh, so you let them do this, huh? A piece of you knew that she was going to survive, and you let her do this bad stuff. I'm gonna go over there and I'll kill her myself. So she jumps through the portal. Also, Fitz and Simmons, they know the protocols that they have to follow. However, so do the hunters, because of the fact that they have their memories basically on a USB drive. So they have to kind of go to a place that even they did not know about. And the only place for that is Deke's place. So they sent everyone over to Deke's place because they didn't know it existed. It was just an empty room. And they go over to, I don't know, like a server room or something like that in order to stop them. However, they plant bombs everywhere. But the problem is the fact that, well, they have to sacrifice themselves in order to be able to blow it up. However, then one of the hunters turns out to be Enoch and is like, hey, I need you guys to change the course of your lives forever and help me. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure. And that has more to do with the ending. So let's go into the finale of the season. So the zombies zombies stop banging on the door because of the fact that apparently they went over to the armory and they just have guns now, so that is a bit dangerous. However, thankfully, Yo-Yo can slow down time and shoot the enemies, which is like, you can do that? Why haven't you been doing that the entire season? However, sadly enough, one bat flies in and it goes into her body, so we may lose Yo-Yo, R.I.P. the gal, potentially. So Deke eventually gets his Quinjet in the air and lands very roughly on top of the Zephyr, and then everyone gets onto the Quinjet in order to head for the temple. And also, Yo-Yo is like, hey, Daisy, if I turn, kill me, because Mac can't do it. Yeah, okay, you think Daisy can do it? Come on. She can't do it. So S.H.I.E.L.D and May have a big battle. However, S.H.I.E.L.D is able to open up the door in order to let, I guess, the other people from her realm through, so that they can eventually go downstairs and go through the portal. And then she goes back through the portal. Meanwhile, on the other side, Daisy decides to quake Sarge, but that doesn't work and he turns into a CGI monster. But quaking is useless now, so it's a brute fisting fight, and we gotta get the biggest guy that we have, and we do not have the Rock. We have the Temu version with way better acting. But go Mac. Mac versus Sarge, and Mac puts up a good fight, but Sarge is just too strong. Can't do anything about it. So then Daisy has to tackle in. However, S.H.I.E.L.D appears behind her, is ready to stab her, but then May stabs S.H.I.E.L.D in the back and kills her, and throws over the blade to Mac, and Daisy then basically gets Sarge naked, as in his CGI beast form, and then Mac kills Sarge, and that's it. We won. Yay. But then May is gonna die. Oh no. However, also Gemma is here with a whole crew, and she's like, don't worry, everything is fine. We're gonna put her in one of those stasis spots in order to save her. And it's like, what is happening? What is happening? I am so confuzzled. And they get back to the Zephyr, which now looks completely different, and I'm just like, how long have we been in that temple? Because how is this possible? But apparently Gemma and Fitz had time in order to do all this stuff, and it's like, when though? When did you have time to do this? Like, I don't really understand what you're doing here. So then we need to leave, so we go to another place, but it turns out we actually went back in time, so another alternate timeline, because unless we use the quantum realm, all of it is going to be counted as an alternate timeline to the main MCU. So we are now in 1931, at least that's what the MCU wiki said, and apparently also Gemma cannot know where Fitz is, and we have an LMD Coulson, because why not? And what? Look, what is this? Oh my god, this season has one huge problem, and that is the fact that it is just set up for the next season. That is just what it is, because while I enjoyed the Sarge storyline, it did feel like just too simple. And then we had the Chromicon storyline, which sure, why not? Alright, but like that one felt weirdly short, and I don't know how you say it, to be honest. Like it was tacked on in order for us to get to 13 episodes, but now it turns out that that was the main storyline. So was the Sarge stuff tacked on? Like, I don't even know, dude. But I enjoyed this season, I will say that. But yeah, this was the final episode, which still feels weird to say, but I did enjoy the season. However, this season is not as good as the last couple of seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D that we've had. But to be honest, in the last 2 seasons, they basically hit peak perfection, so it is kind of difficult to outdo yourself 3 times in a row. Because while yes, season 3 had some small issues, I still very much enjoyed it. This season, however, I will put probably at the lower end of the season rankings. Like, if I were to do it, now obviously the worst one is season 1, because that one is set up and doesn't get into the interesting stuff until the end of the season. Like, for season 1, the exciting stuff is the Civil War stuff, and that's it, okay? But everything before that can be like episode of the week, villain of the week type of thing, and it can be a little bit annoying. But then once it gets into the Winter Soldier stuff, and then especially seasons 2 until 5, it goes full force. And even this season I liked more than season 1, obviously, because the fact that it also gets into its storyline, it just felt weird with the 2 storylines that they were going for. And then that ending is just a what just happened ending. But like I said, I still enjoyed this season very much. Thought it was really fun. The fact that Sarge is actually Coulson, but not Coulson, but kind of Coulson, but not Coulson, I very much enjoyed that. I also liked how Clark Gregg acted differently from Coulson, you know? It's like, yeah, I don't care if my team dies, you know? No one stands in the way of killing S.H.I.E.L.D. And I like the fact that we finally got a backstory on these monoliths that were introduced in, I think, season 2. So we finally now know where they came from, so that plot line is kind of ended. So this season is very much needed. Like I said, very much enjoyed it, but the problem is still with the fact that it's like, okay, we have have this Sarge storyline that we want to do, but that doesn't get us to 13 episodes. So let's do the Chronicom storyline. That will get us to 13 episodes, and it's also just a setup for the next season. Which, look, last season they ended it at least in a good way, but I guess maybe they already got season 6 and 7 together as the finale for the series. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, that's the next season, I guess. We're gonna be exploring a bunch of different timelines, so I'm gonna end it here for you guys. So let me know what you guys thought about season 6 in the comment section down below. My biggest disappointment, obviously, about the season is the fact that it's not been released worldwide on DVD and Blu-ray, and I don't know if I can trust the Japanese version because apparently I can't buy it on Amazon. I can only buy it on eBay, and yeah, I don't really trust that kind of stuff, you know? Because it could be one of those, like, downloaded version that was put on a DVD. Because I've seen that for Punisher and Defenders on eBay before. So I don't know if I can trust that one. Also, it is weird that it's only in Japan and nowhere else in the world, which is so stupid. But like I said, for me, this season was just a bit jumbled. I will say that. But with that being said, thank you all so very much for watching. And I hope you guys have enjoyed. And if you did, please like, subscribe if you're new, if that's already. Turn on notifications. Don't forget to check out the Let's Play channel link in the description and at the end of the video. And I'll see you guys next time when we head over to season 7, baby. Yes, 2 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. back to back before we get into the end game. Bye.